Hello and welcome to Murder Mystery Haunted History. I am BB3. If you are new here, please hit that subscribe button. It does help to throw the channel out there in the algorithm and helps new people to find me. If you're a returning subscriber, you already know I love you and thank you for your continued support. My girlfriend and I might be being stalked. Submitted by Black Car Throwaway. Hey Reddit, I'm a long-time user, but due to the nature of this situation, I decided to use a throwaway. Trigger warning for baby, unaliving, abuse, stalking, etc. Also, apologies if this isn't the right sub. We just need answers. My girlfriend's mother is a longtime H user and has been in and out of jail for my girlfriend's whole life. When she lived with her mother and her mother's husband, she witnessed physical abuse and drug activity. She was forced to move out at a very young age in order to stay alive. She thought her mother was finally clean when her mother announced her pregnancy. After getting over the initial shock, my girlfriend decided to be supportive of her mother since she thought she was clean. That was until her mother overdosed while pregnant. She decided to cut all contact at that point. My girlfriend is also a mandated reporter and last year reported her mother and her mother's husband to the state since she knew it wasn't a safe situation for the baby. The baby died in their house not even a month after birth due to an overdose with signs of physical abuse. My girlfriend's mother was arrested for the murder of her baby and other charges. Her husband was arrested for child endangerment and other charges very recently. At first, the judge did not grant either of them bail. Eventually, her husband was granted bail in which he posted. We did not know this until recently, which helped us put some pieces together. My girlfriend and I like to sit outside her house in the car and just chat or listen to music. Recently, there have been black cars around my girlfriend's house. She also is frequently followed by black cars when she drives me home. It's the same couple of black cars that do this. They're not just random ones. At first, we thought we were just paranoid since everyone was still in jail. But then we found out the husband was out of jail. We began to doubt our insanity. The first major thing happened after my girlfriend and I went on a dinner date. We got home after dark and sat in her car for about 45 minutes, before we noticed the same black car passing by us every few minutes. After 10 minutes of that, a different car drove towards us, flicking its high beams on, when it got close enough for us to see who was inside. It swerved into the oncoming lane, and I genuinely thought it was going to hit the passenger side of the car. It sped away, and we ran inside. After that, we started noticing the black cars more and more. This past Wednesday, around 3 a.m., the same distinct black van that we had been seeing pulled up outside of my house. This was weird because my girlfriend and I live about 30 minutes from each other in two separate cities. A man got out of the van and shined a flashlight through my yard, scanning it almost. He shined the flashlight up at the window I was sitting at, kept it there for a second, and then walked 30 feet to an empty driveway, scanned around for another 20 seconds before getting in the van and peeling away. The windows were ice-covered and frozen, so I couldn't make out the specifics of the van, but it was strange. A few nights later, my girlfriend and I spent some time hanging out in the car when I spotted a black van hiding behind another parked car further up the street. We could only see one headlight, but it creeped us out as we sat in the car. My girlfriend lives between two dead-end streets. Think of a very blocky U. She lives between the two prongs. The van went up the first dead end, 4 ways on, and sat for a few minutes before turning around and driving almost into the other lane of traffic to get close to us. It then went up the other dead end and stayed put. We thought it was weird that the van didn't just back out of the first dead end, instead opting to drive all the way up the narrow street and turn around. After a few minutes, we call a friend and recount the story just to get an extra opinion. While my girlfriend was talking to our friend, I got out of the car to go for a cigarette and to see how far away the van was. I walked up the dead end and the van was about 15 feet before getting the worst gut feeling I've ever gotten. Across the street from me was a black mass, which was darker than the darkness around it. I decided to just turn around and rush my girlfriend into the house. Later that night, we heard a bang coming from downstairs, followed by what sounded like a boot on wooden stairs. We locked the bedroom door and I sat against the door with a baseball bat, hopefully to barricade it. A few minutes later, we heard a car door slam before the sound of the tires squealing and the car driving away. Our initial idea was maybe it came from the TV. but we had paused it and the TV in the next room is never loud enough for the feel real. When I went downstairs an hour later to get water, there was nothing damaged or missing. We theorized that maybe it was the sound of the front door trying to be opened, even though it was deadbolted. My girlfriend's exterior wall doesn't face the road, and we've never heard car sounds like that before. It is, however, next to a private driveway, and sometimes we'll hear her grandparents' car door close or the neighbors backing out. The next day, I was shoveling the sidewalk at my girlfriend's house, an activity that took about 20 minutes, and I saw the same black Chevy Silverado with mud streaks on the tailgate. It circled the block about 4 times. I was able to see the silhouette of a man driving through the passenger side window, and each time it was the same man and same truck. My girlfriend lives in a small town, and we were able to catalog the neighborhood cars. The black van and truck are abnormal. Our theory is that someone is trying to scare my girlfriend into not testifying, or flat out making sure neither of us had the ability to testify. We really just need more opinions. Are we just paranoid, or is there something we should actually be worried about? Do you think these are just weird coincidences? I'm being stalked by a customer at work. Submitted by Significant Olive 3289. I need help breaking this down, and I need to feel like I'm not crazy. I'm a court clerk. I work for my local courthouse. I work in the Clerk of Courts, COC, both in the office and in court, split about half and half time-wise. On Friday, 2/4/22, I was in the office at my desk. I also will assist with customers who come into our office who have questions on certain types of filings. I am the backup coverage specifically for our records window. In my state, we are considered public records. Anyone can come in and request copies from any case, unless it's a juvenile, confidential, or sealed by the court. This is really important to the whole story. I was asked to cover the records desk from 4 to 4:30 p.m. last Friday, so our records clerk could leave a little early. No problem. I have no issues helping out when I can. Around 4:15, we had a frequent flyer, as we have dubbed them. This man comes in frequently to get copies of his case. I should really note that the way my office is set up is a bit important. We are set up kind of like the DMV. You have to come into the main entrance of security, go down a long hallway, and it opens to a lobby. There are elevators straight ahead. The DA's office is to the left, the COC is to the right. You have to open a separate set of doors into our little lobby. There is a counter with windows, and it is in an L shape. If I can figure out how to attach a drawing, I will. The records window is around the corner, tucked in the back. There are also 3 public terminals where any member of the public can use to research cases in my county. So back to the man. We'll call him Joe. Joe has an open family case. He comes in probably once a week to get copies of his family case, or I don't know what the F he's doing. It's really none of my business. He came up to my window somewhere around 4:15 to 4:20 p.m. Said he requested some documents. When documents are requested from the public terminals, they go to a queue, which I then go into and select them to print. I went into the queue, glanced at the documents, and said, "Did you have 11 pages?" He said yes, so I selected and printed. I wrote him a little slip out with the number of copies and his total owed. I gave him the slip, directed him to go back to the window for payment, and would meet him up there. I went to grab the copies off the printer, which jammed. Messed with that for a minute, counted the pages, and took them to the cashier. I then went back to my counter to help the next person in line. Next customer was easy. Her records were prepaid and printed. After the second customer, it was after 4:25 p.m. My co-worker, work wife, we'll call her Lynn, asked me if I wanted to go thrifting for clothes at Plato's Closet after work, and my answer was, yes, let's go. Right as we were discussing this, I am in the view of the records window, but not at it. I saw that Joe had returned to my counter. I went up to the counter and asked how I could help him. He stated, "You must be new." I'm not new. I've been at my job for almost 4 years, and in the legal field for almost 10. I replied, "No, I'm not. How can I help you?" He then made a comment about a paperweight I was using. It was a gift from my niece, a painted rock from a 3-year-old. That's a fancy paperweight you have there. Sir, what can I do for you? You gave me the wrong case. No, sir, I printed off what was in the queue. So, you don't need these 4 pages? I tossed the 4 pages and then adjusted his slip. 7 pages total. Sent him back to the cashier. At this point, it's 4:30. It's Friday, and we are closed. I left and headed to Plato's Closet. It took me about 15 minutes to drive over there. I sat in my car for a few minutes and then went inside. I beat Lynn there. I started browsing. She came in a couple minutes later, stating that she got caught behind a train. So we started shopping and chatting. For some reason, I looked at the door when it opened. There was Joe. Now I knew that it was Joe because he wears the dumb sock monkey hat. I saw him and I got Lynn's attention. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? So I pulled Lynn into an aisle and we ducked down. She's short. I'm tall and I wear heels a lot. I could watch his dumb hat around the store. He immediately went to the back of the store. He looked like he was rubbernecking the whole store. So he goes to the back of the store, grabs a pair of shoes, glances at them, and continues rubbernecking. I continued to watch him as he moved. We moved opposite. We were legitimately hiding behind clothes racks. He moved around the perimeter of the store, continuing to rubberneck, looking for something or someone. So he leaves. We freak out. We check the parking lot to make sure he's gone. We try and shake it off and chalk it up to a coincidence. And then I realized we were talking about it literally in front of him. And Lynn, she's not quiet. She gets scolded on a weekly basis for being loud, her carrying voice. I told the cashiers what happened. We ended up leaving like an hour later. The next day, I felt so uneasy about it. I called my boss and I told her what had happened, and I told her I was going to call the police. I called the non-emergency number and left a message with dispatch. I got a call from an officer a few hours later and explained what had happened. He said to get Joe's name. At this point, I recognized him but didn't know Joe's name offhand. He told me he would call me back on Wednesday when he had a chance to be back on duty. I got Joe's name and called the officer back on Monday and left a voicemail. Monday was fine. Tuesday I was out of the office, but Wednesday, Joe came back Wednesday. He came at 4:20 to file documents into this case. He took 20 minutes to file 2 affidavits and a motion. It should have been like a minute. He left and I had a bad feeling. I called the officer and told him what happened. The officer said if he comes back Thursday to call and they would come down and talk to him. The PD is across the street from the courthouse. Thursday rolls around. No Joe. Until 4:25. He beelined it for a computer in the corner. I messaged my boss. We had already put into place a safety plan. The sheriff's deputy who works security were notified. 3 deputies followed him into my office. I called the PD. 2 officers came down. They questioned him. He admitted to being at Plato's Closet. He was shopping for his 2 young daughters, 9 and 11. They don't fit into clothes at Plato's yet. Plato's has a sister store, Once Upon a Child. Those kids don't really fit in there either. So he had a receipt in his car for Once Upon a Child at 5:07 p.m. He denied hearing my conversation with Lynn, going to Plato's after work. He stated he left my office at 4:15-ish and took his children shopping for clothes. He did not have his children with him at the courthouse or Plato's. He also asked the officer immediately and unprompted, "Did she call you?" He also stated that he believed his ex-wife was setting him up. So, because my office is a public office, and he was made arguably legitimate reasons to come into my office, there's nothing the officers can do. They issued him an oral warning and put him on standby. The kicker is, he could opt into his case electronically, but made a big deal about not being able to opt in a few months ago. We told him if he was having issues, call the court support line and they would be able to remedy the situation. Instead, he chooses to come in and pay $1.25 per page instead of a one-time $20 fee, which apparently he also paid that. If you weren't already freaked out, last year his roommate filed a restraining order against him, followed by his roommate's girlfriend alleging SH. I won't go into details, re the family case. Let's just say it's more than messy. He is also filing extremely high-level types of documents for representing himself. On 2/11/22, update. I was in court all day. Come down to my desk around 4:05 p.m. He came in about 4:10. I left while he was in my office still. What am I supposed to do? The officers can't do anything else. I need another incident outside my office to file a restraining order. I've ordered home security. I signed up for self-defense classes. I'm purchasing mace and looking into handguns. I don't know what else to do. I was stalked and nearly kidnapped at 13 years old. Submitted by Mrs. Sissa. I was always an extremely small and sickly child. I looked young for my age. My family and I lived out of town, about 8 miles. Our little community was next to a highway. The school bus would drop me off 2 blocks away from home. One day I noticed a red truck following slowly behind me. So slow that I figured they were just looking for a house or something. I ignored it and walked to my house. That was the end of that. Consistently, this truck would follow slowly behind me. After a couple days of this, I walked into my house. I was always the first one home, and looked out the window. Inside was an older man and a black lab. He was staring at me, idling inside his truck. Then he pulled away. I decided enough was enough. I told my parents. Of course, my sister was quick to jump in that I was lying. I had a habit of telling stories, but my mom thankfully believed me. She drove me to the bus stop the next morning. The red truck was there, across the street at the gas station, pointing towards the bus. I got on the bus, and my mom decided to drive around the truck. She described the scene. The man was dirty, hunched over in his seat, just staring at the bus. His license plates were caked in mud, so she couldn't make them out. It freaked her out so much she called the police and the school. I went to school and was quickly pulled into the office. The man had been spotted at the school waiting in his truck. That day I rode the bus home. This time the truck was parked alongside the street. I would have to walk past this man's driver's side door to get home. I debated, considered running for it. Apparently this man was getting desperate now that he was spotted. A police car showed up and I talked to the policeman. They went to go talk to the man. He quickly pulled away from the curb and took off down the highway. Never saw him again, and I don't believe he was ever caught. Because of this experience, I'm extremely guarded and paranoid with my own daughter and her soon-to-be sibling. The world is a terrifying place these days, and children go missing so easily. I don't like to think about if I had been grabbed. I wouldn't be here typing this. My kids wouldn't exist. I was lucky. Many children aren't. So, stranger with ill intentions, let's not meet again. Paper bag person surveils my husband and I. So this only happened yesterday, and it's been driving me crazy. It's not as wild as other stories on here, but it's by far one of the creepiest things that's ever happened to me. So my husband and I were walking home from having a beer at the local pub around 6 p.m. In terms of setting the scene, we live in a small New Zealand town, population 2,000, that's a real mixed bag in terms of residents. Older folks, meth heads, low income, but increasingly commuters from our capital city have been settling here. We fall into the latter category. It's spring here, so with still plenty of light, and we're just chatting as we walk in the 10 minutes or so to get home. About 3 minutes into the walk, at the first intersection on our walk, I spot a cat sitting on the fence of one of the corner houses on the other side of the street from us. I say, meow, and it meows back. It then starts stalking a bird, so my husband and I continue watching this house. The cat, really, as we walk past. Suddenly, a person with a brown paper bag mask on their head kind of stumbles out of the front door of this house into the yard. Their mannerisms and how they're moving are so strange, but not what I'd associate with being drunk. The house itself seems completely dead, so there's no party on or anything. The person then turns to us and makes eye contact. Well, the eye holes in the mask are staring at us, and they've slowly started backing away to the front door alcove of the house and disappear from view into the alcove. We've been slowly walking this whole time, and at this point I have literal goosebumps and an intense sense of dread. When I write it down, it sounds so silly, but there was something so creepy about this person. We're still looking as we walk past the house, and the paper bag face slowly emerges from the alcove, watching us before disappearing from view again. As we walk and get further and further away, we keep turning around to look, and the same happens over and over again. Nothing, and then slowly but surely the paper bag face emerges out to watch us. This continued until we were at the end of the street, some 350 meters, and rounded the corner out of sight. It still makes my skin crawl thinking about it. My husband laughed and said it was probably some kid getting ready for Halloween and effing with us. And he's probably right. But I had to keep turning around to watch my back the rest of the walk home because I was so creeped out. I was stalked in my student accommodation, submitted by Please Help 793. I was stalked by a guest in my student accommodation. I'm 19 years old and living far from home in a studio room. I'm often up late, and last week I was just doing some laundry at around 11 p.m. I saw a man sitting in the lobby. I saw him around a bit at night, but I didn't think much of it. I'm in the laundry room. I just put my clothes in the dryer, and I hear the laundry room door beeping. It meant that someone was coming in. There was the man, standing there with no clothes to wash, just staring at me. I maneuvered around him and headed to the lifts. He followed me quickly and cornered me and asked me for my Snapchat. I was tired and just wanted to get back to my room, so I stupidly gave it to him. I figured he'd message and try to flirt. I'd say, I have a boyfriend, sorry if you thought this was anything else, and that would be the end of it. Anyway, he starts messaging me. It's kind of normal. Then he starts saying weird stuff like, I saw you a month ago, and I was impressed. I've been visiting a friend and staying here, and I've been watching you. I noticed that you come out mostly at night. He told me that he was only visiting for about 5 more days. Then it gets worse. He says, I love you, I can't help it. And then I say, I have a boyfriend. He says, I only want you, and continues to completely ignore that. He asked to come to my room, and I said, no. Then he wanted a hug. He asked me if I lived alone or if I was a virgin. He kept saying he loved me and that I was perfect for him, that I impressed him. At that point, I recorded all the messages on Snapchat, spoke to him a little bit more to gather evidence so that I could take it to the reception in the morning. He's been watching me for a month. I got my guy friend who lives on the 2nd floor to walk me down to the laundry room. We sat in the student lounge area and my friend calmed me down. I was shaking with adrenaline and fear. We saw him around the laundry room again, looking for me, but luckily I'd already picked it up. I run back to my room and my friend says that I can stay in his room, but I said, it's okay, I'll just lock my door. It's about 1 a.m. and I hear someone outside my room trying to get in. I asked my friend if he's outside my room and he said, no. So I just froze. I didn't want to make a sound. I felt sick to my stomach and helpless. Eventually it stopped and whoever it was went away. In the morning I reported this to reception and then went to stay a few days with my boyfriend. Then after, went to London to visit a friend, and last night was the first time I'd spent a night in my room since this happened. I'm very paranoid now. Sadly, I probably should be used to this. It's not the first time I've been SH'd. One guy tried to kiss me in a club by grabbing my head, and a bunch of other things have happened that I won't go into here. But anyway, I'm terrified to go outside my room after dark. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder and feeling paranoid.